All right, got new microphones, so I just warn you, they are quite loud. Certainly, I can hear very well. People right at the back, you might tell me if you can't, but yep, good. Tonight, we welcome you to the Ordinary Meeting of Council for the 14th of August. Nala Kadich Wajak Mort Kayan Kadak Nija Walilap Butcher. We're Jinang Wajak Kadajan. We're Nyiting Bula Yeah. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle-Wallup area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. The meeting is being recorded, it's being streamed live online. While all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question may be captured in the recording. We have one apology tonight from Councillor Ingrid Van Dawson. We have some requests for leave of absence. So I'll run through those. Do we need to do these together or separately? Can we do them together? Do them all, vote separately, vote together? Yeah. All right, so I'll put these all together. So I'm requesting a leave of absence from 2 September to 17 September inclusive. Councillor Van Dawson is requesting a leave of absence from 13 August to 19 August, and Councillor Mofflin is requesting a leave of absence from 28 August to, for 1 day, on the 28th of August, and from the 26th of October to the 3rd of November inclusive. Thank you, that was quite confusing. So I'll ask someone to move those. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Lorber. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Were there any other leaves of absence that weren't listed? Nope. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest by members in relation to tonight's agenda? No. The agenda contains the responses to questions that were taken on notice at the ordinary meeting of Council on the 24th of July. That's going to take us to public question time. There are a number of items on the agenda related to planning matters where we do have people who wanted to speak to those. It sounds quite echoey to me. Hopefully when you come up to speak at the microphone, it's not going to be quite so echoey for you. I'm assuming the people who want to speak on items related to planning will speak before their items on the agenda so that we're able to ask them questions on those items. If I am incorrect in that, please let me know, but I think for both the planning items, that's okay. Great. All right, so we'll work our way through the general questions that we take. So the first question I have is Felicity Townsend on general matters. Thanks. So you have 3 minutes. You come up to the microphone and you'll hear a little alarm sound at sort of 2 minutes 45, which is your signal to wrap up.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. My question is in 4 parts. Do you want it in one go?
Yeah, so if you can just read your whole question, then sit down, that'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. It relates to the council meeting on the 10th of July and some questions asked about the junket to the US for AUKUS. Given the Perth Southwest Metro...
Okay, that was definitely worse than mine. We'll just work out what's going on there. No, because we need to record it both for the minutes and the live stream. So
try from here? From here. Okay. Given the Southwest Metro Alliance essentially derives its funds from the respective member councils, ratepayers and other revenue, how do the Mayor and CEO of Fremantle Council, who are board members of PSWMA, justify gifting themselves $14,100 each to undertake the AUKUS US trip to supposedly study homelessness and understand emergency procedures? What correlation would homelessness in the US have with the same here? What relevance do US emergency procedures have with WA, where these come under the State Hazard Plan, HAZMAT Annex A, and will soon be the remit of the Australian Naval Nuclear Power Safety Regulator? Shouldn't Council's due diligence pertain to Defence's plan to base nuclear-powered submarines in Cockburn Sound under AUKUS Pillar 1? Shouldn't that start right here in the Perth Southwest Metro area with, firstly, an independent safety and risk assessment, both in terms of the impact on residents, the environment, marine life, and a potential radiation leak, and a presence of US submarines making us a target in the event of hostilities breaking out involving the US. And community consultation, including in regard to the impact of 700 US submariners and their families moving into the PSWM area in view of the Southwest Rotational Force rotations as of 2027 on an already overstretched housing, road transport and social services. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to the CEO for a response on the parts of that question that's sort of related to Fremantle local government.
Thanks, through the chair. So the city is part of a delegation going over to the US to undertake due diligence on how currently responses are made to the industry, or obviously also what other industries support defence, and get a bit of an understanding on how other people in the world are managing these sorts of issues, and that is part of the due diligence. The city is very aware that in any emergency response, we will play an active part in it. We are a member of the LEMAC in the local area. There will probably be others that lead that, but we'll be required to provide support, and we'll learn a little bit of that, about that as well. I think it's important that the City of Fremantle become very involved and understand the implications of having up to 1,000 foreign personnel coming over to train Australian personnel how to undertake maintenance of these submarines and managing that in the local area, and will we be part of that? And we need to understand how other local governments are dealing with those issues as well. That is part of the due diligence.
Thank you. And Helen Cox.
Good evening. We all understand the importance of language and words, whether spoken, written, or inferred, and the same can be said for what is not said. So my question relates to the corporate plan report item C2408-7. Attachment refers to the 1.6 million asset renewal of commercial tenancy fit-outs in the Civic Centre, level 1, 2 and 3, and Newman Court 23-24. How much has been spent on the Civic Centre tenant fit-outs in 23-24, and how much revenue has been generated from the Civic Centre tenants in 23-24? From which funding source is the repayment of the 20 million Civic Centre loan coming from, given the low level of tenant revenue in 23-24? And as originally stated in the city's business plan, as the repayment source, what does the South Beach implementation budget of 3.2 million in 23-24 as a project or project components refer to in the corporate plan report? Is the expected completion date of the South Beach change rooms in early 2025, as referred to in the corporate plan report, still realistic? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go to the Director of City Business on those ones.
I have to take some of those questions on notice and come back to you with the exact figures, but we have contributed money towards the fit out of the 2 retail tenancies on the ground floor, but we can certainly come back to you and answer those questions.
Do you want to add anything, Director of Infrastructure?
Thank you, through the chair. All I would add in respect to the South Beach change facilities is that the project is on target and is still anticipated to be completed early in the new year.
Thank you. And Elizabeth Megros.
Good evening, everyone. One, I note the fact that my questions from the last OCM were not answered. Two, lease arrangements or otherwise entered with the FTC in 2021. Mayor Fitzharding, what did you mean with your comment, a bigger answer than the question, when in fact my question did in no way relate to the response given to it? Why was the question allowed to be answered as if it did relate to the current expression of interest process or any decision in relation to the sale of Victoria Hall, when in fact it didn't? I ask again, how was the license to use the hall for 3 years granted to the Fremantle Theatre Company? That is, how was the Local Government Act applied in 2021 in relation to Victoria Hall and FTC? 3. Destination marketing. Indicate by page number where the above item line can be found in the annual budget. 4. This is Fremantle. Have East Fremantle and Coburn contributed to the campaign? 4 out of the 16 restaurants showcased in the section WA's top restaurants in Fremantle are located outside Fremantle. Why are Fremantle ratepayers funding the advertising? 5. Thinking about the following. Ratepayers having contributed funds to One Planet for many years to be certified a carbon neutral city, Council's efforts to ban fossil fuel advertising, and establishing a new group to monitor community emission. Mayor Fitzharding, how do you justify leaving your fossil fuel emission by flying 3 times to Canberra to lobby for yet unapproved plans when this could have easily been done in other
Thank you.
ways? Is the use of fossil fuels more justified when someone else foots the bill? Thinking about your and the CEO's AUKUS excursion to the US. I can't help but be reminded of George Orwell's fable, The Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. That's a quote from the story. Thank you. And by
Thank
the
you.
way, has any of you taken notice of what the entrance to this public space looks like? It's littered with bottles.
Thank you. Most of those questions don't relate to the agenda, and quite bluntly, they'd probably be better emailed through. In relation to the question that you say wasn't answered last time, in fact it was, but I can ask the Director of City Business to give the same answer that he gave then, which was that it was aligned with the Local Government Act and it was an agreement with Fremantle Theatre Company. I'm happy to ask him to give that answer again, but in future, if items aren't on the agenda, I would really suggest you email them through. Thank you.
Through the chair, so as previously mentioned, it has been predominantly provided through licenses. The original process, we licensed the building to Space Market. Space Market then assigned that license to Fremantle Theatre Company, hence why there was no additional EOI process as part of that process.
Okay, Lynn Wicks.
Good evening, everyone. I was devastated to hear that the Fremantle Council voted unanimously to sell Victoria Hall. At one time, Fremantle was proud to have 30 music halls and theatres in our city. Now we have only one left. It is tragic and disappointing that not one councillor voted against the sale. Someone who could see the vision that there could be better options for the future of the hall to enhance our city of Fremantle and generate much needed income for Fremantle Council. This valuable income generating asset with so much history attached to it should be retained by Fremantle Council and used to its full and highest potential for the enjoyment of present and future generations instead of being disregarded and disrespected by uncaringly being sold off cheaply to a prospective buyer just to prop up the Fremantle Council budget. This is like selling off the goose that laid the golden egg. The council should be supported by continual good income which is generated from our many valuable income generating assets in Fremantle, not by the sale of income generating assets. Tragically, our valuable income generating assets in Fremantle have been sold off cheaply one after the other over the years, which means the end of our ongoing income, leaving ratepayers to pay the bills now, which is not right. This is financial mismanagement. Selling off income producing assets in Fremantle must stop now. I'm of the understanding that the Fremantle Council wants Fremantle to be the arts centre of Perth. We have the Fremantle Arts Centre, the West End businesses, we have even an international arts festival every Easter. But we could do much better if we concentrate on adding the performing arts into the mix as well. At present, we have the Fremantle Theatre Company using Victoria Hall as their home. They want to be in Fremantle. They do not want to go elsewhere. Then there is CBC and John Curtin College close by, who also need a space for their performing arts classes and performances. They could all use Victoria Hall as their home. It should be used to its full and highest potential with events, functions or performances there every weekend, with the income generated used to renovate the building and bring it back to its former glory. Why would Fremantle Council want to sell off this valuable income generating asset that could be well used to round off Fremantle as the arts centre of Perth and attract thousands of more visitors to our port city every year? I'm convinced that this is the way forward for Fremantle, to make Fremantle into the best tourist destination with the best full arts focused in WA. Let's start now by not selling Victoria Hall and look at other options for it instead. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to clarify, there was no decision to sell Vic Hall. There was a continuation of an expression of interest process, which may include the continued use for theatre or other cultural activities. So we're continuing to talk to the people who put in EOIs. I think that's the key crux of your question. The next question is from Dominic Mimner, relating to Victoria Hall.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all well. I wanted to talk about the same subject. 19 years ago, I moved to Perth. And one of the first areas that I really fell in love with was Fremantle. I've got a real passion for this city. It's beautiful, it stands out, it's different. What makes it different is our heritage buildings. They're precious. They're something that we should be holding on to hand down to our grandchildren. We don't want to be, we don't want to lose our history. And Victoria Hall is one of the last 30 performing arts centres that we've got left in Fremantle. It's the last one. I don't agree with selling off our assets. I think we should be investing in them. There's a suggestion that I had from a friend that it could be leased out to CBC School. They haven't got a performing arts centre. And I do realise there was a deal on the table a few years ago where they had $7 million ready to build this, and I think the council held it up, and then it doubled in price, so it never went through. I mean, this situation now could be rectified. It's an opportunity there to be had. And what about, inviting maybe Roger Cook to come and have a look at this? I think, as I believe he may have invested money in Perth City. Why not the council invite him to come down and invest some money in this beautiful heritage building? It's going to need a lot of money because it's in disrepair. So, selling it off, you're not going to get top dollar for it. And I beg you not to sell it to someone that's not going to have, not use it for community use. I was going to say something else and I've forgotten. But yeah, performing arts and music. We've got enough restaurants, we've got enough cafes. We want to keep the balance. So having it as a performing arts centre is I think, the best situation for Fremantle. We don't need more apartment buildings. Apartments should be staying out into the suburbs. Fremantle hasn't got the infrastructure. And just one more point, going off the subject, we should be really keeping our carbon footprint down. And I believe in Zoom meetings as well. Maybe you don't need to go to the US. Maybe a Zoom meeting would be good, and it would save us a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you. And to clarify, we do offset flights, as most businesses and governments, I expect, would. All right, I'm going to go to Tamara Travia on waste management, and then we'll move through to the petition. Thanks.
Good evening, all. My question this evening pertains to waste management and the sensing technologies that are being utilised by the City of Fremantle for the Internet of Things, evident on the Innovative Mapping Solutions platform. The average resident is using the 3-bin system, believing that the content of their recycling bins is being recycled under the priority of sustainability. However, contents have ended up in landfill and maybe possibly ending up in incineration. In the 24-25 budget, 9.9 million is being spent in the delivery of waste and resource recovery initiatives. At some point, without my knowledge, 2 of the council rubbish bins I was allocated were fitted with RFID sensors under the lip of the base of the bin. RFID sensors are used to collect real-time information on household waste of individual properties. These sensors are used to identify bins to a property, to recover lost bins, improve the efficiency of rubbish collection, and meet smart targets outlined in Waste Management Policy Number 2.2 to reduce bin collections by 20%. However, the capacity of RFID sensors can include data on the weight of bins and link up to visual recordings on collection vehicles that monitor bin contents, as identified by other councils. My questions are: how and when were those sensors fitted? What data is collected regarding waste of individual properties like mine in Hilton? And what capacity does the RFID sensors have currently and their potential? This data is being collected to provide more efficient use of resourcing at the cost of privacy and transparency. Knowing how lucrative the waste management industry is, it's important to also know who has access to this data. We've been expected to diligently clean and recycle and use drop-off centres, believing that these practices are having a positive impact on our environment, only for it to end up in landfill and incineration. How much waste from the City of Fremantle is currently going into landfill and into incineration, and what amount can be guaranteed as being recycled? If we're now incinerating plastics, will our 3-bin system and the recycling centre be adjusted accordingly? We're engaging in questionable behaviours to meet net zero targets. One local company I know of collects plastic baker's pallets that are washed, shredded and then remade. We know how durable the old soft drink crates are. The collection of these pallets is regardless of their age or condition, and they may have only been used once. How is the use of resources justified as being good for the environment? It does, however, meet sustainability targets for businesses. Similarly, we may meet the 20% reduction in waste from bin collections, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who has asked a family member in another council jurisdiction to pop the occasional rubbish bag into their bin, therefore impacting the accuracy of waste data. I am a teacher and I've worked in sustainability in my local community for a long time, and I see the focus on data is changing the cohesiveness of our communities in terms of how we go about sustainability practices. And I'm just concerned that we're being reduced to data points and targets, and that's taking away from the connection we have in our communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. I'll go to the Director Infrastructure. I suspect we might not be able to give you a full answer on the RFID thing tonight, but certainly in terms of how we're meeting our waste avoidance targets, I'd hope we can tell you a bit about that.
Thank you, through the chair. Just in respect to the RFID tagging, when we introduced the 3-bin system, we did include the sensors in all the bins. They're currently used for asset tracking, so they link to our asset database, so we know where the bins are against the properties. We don't have currently the fleet or the trucks to be able to read or calculate weights or contents of the bins, so they're just really an asset management tool for now. We are aware of opportunities in the future, but they're things that we'd have to look at as we developed our fleet. In respect to our waste targets, I think Fremantle, being a member of the IIG, are renowned for performing well in respect to waste recovery and landfill avoidance. We'll continue to push that. There are opportunities to improve avoidance of landfill as we move to review our waste services in respect to the commercial sector and the CBD targets that we've looked at more recently. But currently, our performance is actually very good. We'll always strive to improve, and we have a strong educational program as well. So we do recognise that it's not all about data and technology. There is also the contact and the education side of sustainability and waste management that we'll continue to strive to improve on. I'd be happy to take the rest of the questions on notice.
Thank you. All right. Now, we have a petition that's going to be presented, but I'll give Sam Wainwright, former Councillor Wainwright, the opportunity to speak to the petition now, and then we'll present it in petitions. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mayor and councillors. It's a pleasure to be here, especially having spent many hours looking at the design of this room, but never having been in it in its function as a council chamber. And look, when I finished my time on council in October of 2021, I said I wouldn't come back every single meeting to have a chip at you. It'd only be about the things that I'm passionate about, and this is definitely one of them. Now, hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at the petition. There's 3 observations I want to make about it before I get to the substance of it. The first is this petition was conceived of many months ago, nearly a year ago in actual fact, so it long predated the current discussion about the trip to the United States, so I'll only be referring to that tangentially. The second thing is that I will be tabling just over 415 signatures on that petition. We got more signatures than that, but those of us that composed the petition deliberately excluded people who were not residents of Fremantle. So nearly all of the 415 signatories are residents of Fremantle. There might be a few Hamilton Hill people in there as well, but it's very much a targeted petition, and it's designed to give you a snapshot of the feeling of a part of our community. We know that petitions are self-selecting in a sense, but we also think it bears genuine weight. The third thing I would just say is the explanatory notes to the petition refer to HAZMAT Annex A. Now that the definitions around they've been changed and updated, but what we describe in the petition still stands good. Okay, I'll move fairly quickly through the main points of the petition and elaborate on some of them. So point 1 of the petition is that we, the undersigned residents of the City of Fremantle, respectfully request that the Council, 1, call on the Commonwealth Government to ban the berthing of nuclear-powered or armed submarines at Stirling Naval Base, given its proximity to a large urban population. And we don't say that lightly. Of course, the risks of an accident with a nuclear submarine are small, but the consequences are huge. And let's bear in mind, those nuclear submarines have reactors, nuclear reactors, with 4 or 5 times the enriched uranium of the bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And accidents do and have happened with nuclear submarines. There are 9 nuclear submarines sitting on the ocean floor, 5 former Soviet ones, 5 former US ones. Then there's the issue of the nuclear waste, and there's been some disingenuous reporting of the so-called low-level radioactive waste, that it's just like the stuff that will be, that generated by hospital gloves and like generated at a hospital. That is simply not true. Yes, it's categorised as low-level radioactive waste, but it's still stuff that needs to be kept out of the environment for 300 years. Furthermore, the side discussions or extra agreements that have just been breaking in the news over the last week reveal that there is the intention, or certainly the intention, to leave open the possibility of highly radioactive waste being received at that facility that will then have to be transferred somewhere else, and also the likelihood of the submarines not only being nuclear powered, but hosting nuclear weapons. The second point of the petition, we ask, explain how will the city respond to the fact that nuclear-powered and nuclear-armed submarines in Cockburn Sound are inconsistent with the city's nuclear-free policy and the pledge to support the treaty to ban nuclear weapons, which is adopted policy of the City of Fremantle. Now, if there's any councillor that thinks, well, that's, you know, that's stuff that was feel-good stuff that was adopted in the past, it's all just symbolic, that sort of stuff. If that's the genuine belief of any councillors, then I would challenge you to repeal those policies. Because if not, the practice of the council should be to follow those policies. And I could add the Mayors for Peace, which City of Fremantle supports as well. Now, the last 2 points of the petition, this is where I'll reference the
we have sort of gone quite a lot past 3 minutes, so I'll let you know that.
Sure. Look, I'll wrap up on this point. I mean, this I think is where the issue of the trip to the United States comes in. Look, I won't put my hand on my heart and say there's nothing that could be learned in a practical sense by going on that trip. But the real world consequence is political support for the AUKUS process. That's how it will be read in the community, regardless of what anyone intends. The message is, this is happening, we've all got to get on board, whether you like it or not, be pragmatic, that's the real world we're living in. Well, some of us don't want to get on and just live with it. The last points of the petition refer to local government obligations in the case of nuclear accident. And I'll finish with a reference to the Mayors for Peace thing, because I think this is, you know, this stuff really is important. I think all governments, state, federal, local, our intentions are revealed, not first and foremost by adopted policy, by how we spend our money, where it goes. We live in a world that is spending $2 trillion a year on weapons. Just the increase in expenditure on weapons alone over the last year is more than the total commitments that made to COP on climate change. And Australia's contribution to that is going to be $368 billion on the submarines. That's the real commitment that we're seeing. Does the City of Fremantle want to oppose that or help project a better future for all? Now, the petitioning, I've got the petitions here with the 450.
Yep, so we'll move through to petitions now, and you can present that to the CEO.
Okay, then. Well, I'm assuming you're not going to let me speak to it again, so I'll...
Correct.
I'll hand it over to the CEO. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, and the report will come back on that. Okay. We have no deputations or presentations, so I will move through to confirmation of the minutes. Do I have a mover for confirming the minutes of the last meeting of council? Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Is there any elected member communication from councillors? Okay. I did want to take a minute to acknowledge the 2024 Walga Local Government Honours Program and the significant honour that was awarded to Councillor Doug Thompson through that program of becoming a life member of Walga. I'm not quite sure exactly what that entails. Perhaps you can go to meetings for the rest of your life, Doug, and, you know, we're happy for you on that. But I did want to just, and I know Councillor Thompson's going to hate this, but I did want to just allude to some of the reasons why Councillor Thompson was awarded what is a very significant honour. We had to wait till very late in the evening for Councillor Thompson to receive this honour because it is one of the highest honours that you can receive under the awards. Councillor Thompson was first elected in 1988, and that alone gives some of us pause. I think Councillor Williamson Wong is trying to imagine 1988. And is the city's longest serving councillor. So through his 35 years at City of Freo, Councillor Thompson has been a member of countless internal and external committees and made and influenced decisions that positively affect and enhance the community of City of Fremantle, but also WA more broadly, and particularly through the area of waste management. So those of us who've been on council for a while know that the absolute go-to person on any issues to do with waste management is Councillor Thompson. But I think what's really important is acknowledging actually some of the massive changes that happened in waste, very much with Councillor Thompson's stewardship. So things like FOGO that we talk about, you know, we all know about, we all understand. It was the pioneering work of the Resource Recovery Group, or previously the South Metropolitan Regional Council, of which Doug was chair, that really pushed the first use of this system after trials in 2017 and 2018. and it really paved the way for the FOGO service that we know today. The Resource Recovery Group has been awarded a number of trials, a number of awards itself for the 3-bin system, and it's pretty much just a way of life, and it was great to see some other local governments getting on board in the last couple of days. But it does achieve a more than 65% diversion from landfill, and that is a very good thing. There's a lot here. I won't read it all out because Councillor Thompson's already not comfortable with this, I think. But also community waste reduction, reuse and recycling, education, on the ground education, getting people out to have a look at how these systems work has been an absolute, Doug has been a champion of all of that. Doug's also been a member of the State Government Waste Task Force, which looked at sort of issues in terms of the recycling market, and was a member of the Container Deposit Scheme State Task Force, which is obviously something else that we now very much take for granted. Councillor Thompson obviously likes going to meetings because he's been a member of multiple WALGA groups, has been a member of the WALGA State Council from April 2008 until December 2023. That's a very long time. And a member of the South Metropolitan Zone. Also a member of the Selection Committee, CO Selection Committee, Environment and Waste Policy Team, the Municipal Waste Advisory Council, and I won't list all his committees here at Fremantle, but he's also been recognised for his service to both this council and to North Ward over the 35 years of service. So it was a really important honour. I think we all were quite, emotional when we thought about the amount of time and service that Councillor Thompson had given, and that it was being acknowledged in this way. So thank you, Councillor Thompson, and congratulations on the award. Do you want to write a reply?
Well, just thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, funnily enough, I was actually highly gratified to receive that recognition. But I think the thing that struck me most was that Councillor Archibald, yourself, Councillor Graham and Councillor Van Dawson turned up to sit through 3.5 hours of speeches and presentations on a Friday night. I mean, that is what impressed. That, for me, I actually, without a joke, that was probably one of the most gratifying things that councillors turned up for it, and I really appreciate that. So I appreciate the honour, and I do see it as an honour, and I do also would like to congratulate ex-mayor Carol Adams and Logan Howlett as well, because they also received honours, and they're both from our zone. So, but thank you very much for that. Listening to those. To that list of things, it makes me feel a little bit on the Asian side, but anyway, that's the way it goes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Okay, so we're going to go through to the agenda now and to the planning reports. So I'll go to the item C24081, which is the Clontarf Road, Naylor Street, Beaconsfield item. And we have two speakers on that item. No, we just have one, sorry. And that is Lachlan McCaffrey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of item 1 and provide our full support for the officer's recommendation, which suggests approval of the proposed local development plan, subject to one minor modification of roofing material, which we support. Stockland would like to thank the city's officers for their input throughout the assessment of their local development plan and commitment to collaborate to improve design outcomes throughout the 9-month assessment process. This has resulted in the curation of a future community that achieves a high-quality design response, as well as prioritises public open space for residents and the broader community. The local development plan is proposed in response to a condition of subdivision approval and provides site-specific development requirements to coordinate the development of 158 residential lots, and the community will be developed by Stockland, who are seeking to create an integrated medium-density housing precinct and construct all 206 2- and 3-storey homes. The development requirements of the LDP facilitate housing diversity, including 13 unique dwelling types, ranging between 1 and 4 bedroom sizes that are designed in terrace housing formation. These homes will provide high amenity dwelling designs, which are set amongst a high quality urban environment. The LDP manages and ensures that each street is activated to create a safe pedestrian friendly environment and further develops the attractive and quality of the network of public open space throughout. As part of the subdivision approval, 16% public open space was approved in lieu of the required 10%. The establishment of pedestrian connections removes the typical dominance of cars and connects established residential areas with natural areas such as Clontarf Hill. Importantly, the LDP maintains consistency with the newly adopted medium density codes, which has formed the basis of all requirements and ensures that exceptional quality home design will be delivered internally and externally. The LDP has been subject to the review by the City's Design Review Committee in May 2024, as well as the Department of Planning Design WA team in June 2024. The suggested improvements have been incorporated. General feedback throughout the assessment process has been focused on trees and landscaping on private lot, which have been incorporated with significant improvements as a result of the new medium density codes. Each site will be delivered with 2 trees and will be supplemented with generous landscaping in the public open space and streets. Again, Stockland, as well as our project team, greatly appreciate the City's involvement in the progress of the local development plan and look forward to working collaboratively with the City to further develop this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, did we have any questions that people wanted to ask? Nope. Good. Okay, that's great. Well, we'll go on to the item then. Do I have a mover for the item? Councillor Lorber and a seconder? Councillor Archibald? All right. Did you want to open debate, Councillor Lorber?
No, just there's a few amendments that we can probably get to if we need to.
Thanks, I'm sure we will. Did anyone want to speak on the item before we get into those amendments? No? Councillor Sullivan then.
Thank you. Look, I will speak on the item before I move my amendments, just to save time. I do appreciate the work that Stockland and their consultants have done, and it's it's great that we're now seeing with the earth turned the redevelopment of that site. It's been a long time coming. The previous owner sat on the land for a very, very, very long time, and we very much appreciate that a developer that's actually prepared to put the money where their mouth is has come along and is moving forward with it. And it is a realistic development in the sense that it's something that can go to market, it can be sustainable, it can be achieved. And while some people might have preferred more diversity, it does have, I think, sufficient diversity and sufficient design quality to be an attractive addition to our community. And for all of those reasons, in fact, I would also add that I'm very appreciative of the fact that when we looked at the subdivision back last year, I think it was, that the concerns that were raised and supported by this council have largely been accommodated and dealt with by Stockland. It wasn't something that necessarily they had to commit to because those sorts of matters are approved by the Planning Commission. But the things that really troubled me, which included the way in which residents addressed Clontarf Road, have been addressed adequately, and I acknowledge and appreciate that. In terms of the actual LDP, again, I support everything that's within the LDP area. The LDP area basically covers the land that Stockland own. It's the cadastral boundary and inside that area. And of course, the only thing that I have raised, and I've raised it with elected members and I raised it with Stockland was just my concern about the parking in the area. And so I do have a number of amendments to those, and I'll speak to those after I move them. But I just wanted to preface those amendments by, I don't know how many people have been sort of familiar with that area. You're probably familiar with the Portuguese Club. You're probably familiar with the gymnasium and the other businesses and the semi-industrial nature of Strang Street and Strang Court. You're probably even familiar with, some of the other more fruity land uses in that area that we might prefer not be there. But the reality is it's a very busy area already. And it's been a very busy area with this huge site effectively been largely inactive for decades. So we're the starting point of the redevelopment of this area is not a piece of land that there is no activity on. It's a piece of land that is surrounded by a huge amount of activity. And that's going to be a really important thing for us to consider. So I will move my amendments. I'll move them in two parts, I think, because they're very different. So I'll move the amendment that's printed on page 4 and speak to that in a sec. Sorry,
Page 3?
Sorry, page 3. The amendment is, a new condition 4, sorry.
Excellent. Do we have a seconder for that amendment? I think, yep. Councillor Williamson Wong kept her hand up for longer. I was looking to Councillor Archibald because I knew she also contributed to some of this one. So, Councillor Sullivan, back to you.
Thanks. Before I start on my amendment, I will also note for those elected members that might not have seen it that an email did come through this afternoon that Mayor Fitzharding circulated from the proponents just to to provide some more information about the engineering plans that they had already submitted to the city and have already been approved, as I understand it, by city officers and have gone out for construction. And I'll speak to those soon, but I'll put on notice for the staff. Perhaps they need to provide some further information about those. So if I can question that and get that answer after I've finished. As I said, there are there's two very large verges that wrap around this site along Naylor Street and Strang Street. At the moment, those verges are unimproved. Effectively, they're just limestone road base and just weed verges mostly. They don't have any footpaths on them. The verges are very heavily used by the community already. If you go there during the day and during the evening, they are virtually continuously parked with right angle or rather informal parking. Anything up to about 120 bays, 120 cars park around that site. Now, obviously, that needs to change. The developer and the residents that are living there aren't going to want to see that like that in that state when they move in. And so there is a need, an absolute need for the developer to try and improve that area. It's in their interest, and that's why they're proposing it. But it's also because they need to provide visitor parking, and they haven't come forward with a scheme that provides all of the visitor parking in the development area, and they're reliant on some of the surrounding roads, our roads, to help provide visitor parking. Now, what's proposed is 22 bays, 22 parallel bays, and that's not inconsistent with what the city tends to roll out in other subdivision areas as well. And you will have heard me in each of those examples say, I don't think that's going to be enough for the sort of level of medium density, higher density housing in areas like Knutsford Street, in areas like the Burt Street redevelopment. And I've consistently come into this chamber and said, we need a proper parking strategy in those redevelopment areas. And I have consistently been told it's going to be looked at, and I've consistently seen nothing done about it. So in this instance, I decided, oh, well, I'll put a recommendation up to make sure that it is seriously entertained, and that's what I've put forward. Now, in this recommendation, there are two parts. One is to basically require the city to seriously entertain right-angle parking bays. It's not trying to design it, still leaving it for the city officers to design it, with the in liaison with the developer, or in fact the developer to design it and get approval from the city, basically for it to go ahead under construction. There is land available for that, but it will need the cooperation and possibly the investment of the city to get it right. Now, the difficulty with that now is that stage one has already been approved. Now, I don't know what the consequences of that are going to be in terms of this recommendation, and maybe the result will be that there won't be any change in Naylor Street. It might be the case that Strang Street can still have this accommodation. It might be the case that everything other than stage one, which is just a portion of Naylor Street, accommodate a serious level of parking. So even with a serious level of parking that I'm talking about, it will still be a net reduction overall in the parking that is available in that area. So we will go from probably 120 something informal bays, wall-to-wall parking, which is unacceptable, obviously, to around about maybe 50 if we put right-angle parking in limited areas with trees in between, down to potentially 22 if the current plan as it is goes forward. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be the councillor that has to endure the endless decades of complaints about the inability to park anywhere in that area, to go to the gym, to go to any of the businesses in that area, for any of those businesses to have their staff actually come to work and the like. Now, it's easy to say, well, they all should just be providing their own parking on their own sites. Well, so should the applicant as well. So I'll wrap up, sorry, Mayor. I still think even with the information that is provided, I still think the amendment should be supported, but I do acknowledge that there will probably need to be some acknowledgement and acceptance that the stage one works need to go ahead because they've already been contracted, as far as I understand, and that we just need to look at what we can get done and get achieved with the recommendation as it's printed. The second half of that recommendation, just quickly, I think is already been incorporated in the design. I think the developers have done a pretty good job at sort of recognising that there needs to be an adequate an improvement in the way in which pedestrians get from this new development site across and down to Hampton Road, whether it be via Clontarf Road or Culver Street, which is the one that runs along the edge of the gym. And so they have proposed very good modifications in that area, which will certainly slow things down. I know that was a concern of Councillor Archibald's as well. So I'll put that to you. Thank you.
I might just ask a question off the back of that, of officers. If we were to change the word slightly, and obviously with Councillor Sullivan's agreement, to say something like a revised landscaping plan be submitted for the city's approval, would that have a material impact on the timeline for delivery of stage one, do we think?
Through the chair, I wouldn't have thought so, but that's probably an answer caveated on seeing a program from a developer.
All right, I just think in order to make sense, if there isn't already officer approved, and I might just check that is already officer approved, the design drawings for, yeah.
Is that working?
Yeah.
Through the Mayor, as we explained on Monday, the that original landscape plan was actually approved as part of the subdivision application that went through council several months ago. So we are doing this a little bit behind the eight ball. That said, I've spoken to the developers this afternoon, and I do think there's still appetite to look at that landscape plan, and I think we can make improvements.
All right, so Councillor Sullivan, if we were to change your amendment slightly to say a revised landscaping plan be submitted for the city's approval, that gives consideration to. Would you be comfortable with those changes?
Well, I am. I mean, we're really talking about subdivision works rather than just a landscape plan as a concept. Where we're at now is actual subdivision civil works. So perhaps it could refer to the civil works. The landscape plan is really a indicative plan. We're now at the meaty end.
Or should we just take out the word landscaping plan and just say
Well,
plan?
the staff drafted this because they wanted it to relate to the Planning Commission subdivision thing. You could actually and make it pursuant to condition 19 of that conditional subdivision approval. I don't know whether in the subdivision approval there's also reference to civil works, but I mean this is really a civil works matter, not just a concept.
Don't know if officers have a view on whether this would be sufficient.
If I could make the suggestion through the chair to change it from landscape plan to public realm plan, I think that adequately would pick up civil works as well as soft planting.
Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Sullivan?
I'm comfortable with whatever allows the officers to move forward on it.
Okay, so hopefully we've got something up there that has the correct impact. Councillors, on the amendment. I'll just speak to the extent to say thank you for bringing this forward, and I think it's something that we do need to recognise that there's not going to be more land at the gym for parking. There's not going to be more land at businesses for parking, and it is all parked out at the moment. And it isn't, it's not going to be an easy area for people to use in the way that they do now if we don't provide a bit more parking. So we obviously, I think more broadly, will need to look at transport connections through that area and active transport connections. And, it'd be great if a few more people were riding to work or riding to the gym or whatever. But I think, at the moment we certainly could see a problem emerging. So I fully support the amendment. All right, if there's no further speakers, I'll put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. So there's a second amendment you wanted to move, Councillor Sullivan?
Yes, so as printed on page 4 this time, I'll move it and then speak to it.
We have a seconder for that one? Yep, Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. This is a lot simpler in the sense that, as you know, when we've had developments such as at Leighton Beach, where they're new subdivision areas, the works are done at a very high standard compared to what exists in our normal suburbs. And it is only reasonable and pretty common practice that local governments seek ways to find the right revenue source to maintain that higher standard of works. Some local governments get a lot of developer contributions. We don't do that. That actually helps the developers to develop in our area by not having developer contribution schemes of thousands of dollars per lot, as they say do over in Cockburn. But we do need to look at ways of increasing the revenue so that the high quality of landscapes that are put into these new developments can be sustained over the longer term, because that will be the absolute expectation of the residents who are moving into these areas, that they were gifted a high quality residential environment to live in, and they will expect that be maintained at that standard. I would say that this is trying to pick up those things which are over and above what we would normally do. So in the parklands, for example, there is a lot of need to create footpaths and lighting because the front doors of many of the residents are actually fronting onto the public open space. That's not how we would normally have existing parks. We wouldn't need to have a lot of lighting necessarily, and certainly wouldn't need to have footpaths going on both sides of a park to get access to a front door. And I'm not saying that they're bad things, they're just different and they're over and above the normal. And in addition, you know, we don't normally put in all of the low-level ground covers and the like, wall-to-wall landscaping. Most people landscape their own verges. We're going to be responsible for all of those as well. In addition, you know, there are a number of things that are certainly over and above. Putting in place a lot of things in the parklands, you know, structures and the like, we know they're very high maintenance costs. And in fact, they probably have a lifespan of 10 years, meaning they're going to need to be replaced every 10 years. So we do need to generate the extra income to keep those things up to the standard that the residents in that area expect. So the special area rate is likely, but the first step is to identify what the extra maintenance costs would be to justify that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. Any other speakers on this amendment? No? Okay, I'm going to put this one to a vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Back to the item as amended. Anyone wish to speak on this? Councillor Lawler, if you speak, you'll close. So I just say, kind of echoing Councillor Sullivan's points, that it is really gratifying that we've come through a process that I think has resulted in something that not only will be really welcomed by the market, but will, you know, meet the expectations of the community of Fremantle in terms of livability, sustainability, and some of the other core values that we hold. I'm really optimistic, or hopeful at least, that this will catalyse a bit of a renewal of the area. Like, I think when you look across the road at the garden centre, for example, there's an amazing site there waiting to do something a little bit more active. You know, it's a very patchwork area, and I think having such a significant development as this one will really hopefully get people thinking about what other things could happen in the vicinity. So great to see it full steam ahead. We're very much looking forward to having some more housing availability in the Fremantle market. And yes, glad to see things progressing. So, Councillor Lawler, did you want to close?
Yeah, just briefly, if I may, because I just want to thank the staff and the proponents for actually working together since this last came before us to deliver something that, you know, much to what you said, it's just going to be a much better outcome for the city and for the residents that ultimately wind up living there. So the added amendments, I think, only make this better and help improve transparency. So this is one where I may have voted against it last time. I'm enthusiastically in support this time. So look forward to seeing the works get done.
Thank you. All right, so we'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. So that brings us to South Terrace. Thank you. We've got two speakers on this one, Peter Sanders and, oh gosh, John Kirkness. Sorry, your name just jumped out of my brain. And you can speak in whichever order you prefer.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Mayor, I did have a... it is rather savage. I did have an illustration that I know councillors who attended the site yesterday have, but if I can just distribute those around for others, if that's okay. Looking at the councillors who have it, I think. Okay. Yeah, thank you for the ability to address the council. I appreciate those councillors who were able to make it to site yesterday and see the specifics of this application, and also like to acknowledge the planning staff who did facilitate this issue of the front of the French doors coming to council as a separate item from the substantive application that's already been approved, which is for very comprehensive conservation and adaptation and extension of this semi-detached dwelling, which is in currently very poor aesthetic and integrity condition, however, is structurally sound. Getting to the nub of it, the policy reference that the planning officers have used in not supporting this particular part of the application is with regard to reconstruction of fabric, not conservation of existing fabric. And in fact, the provision in the policy, which is a very detailed policy, the heritage areas policy, actually refers to and this aspect of reconstruction as something that is strongly encouraged but is not actually mandated. Now, very much of this policy does contain effectively mandatory requirements, but this particular aspect of reconstruction isn't. And in this particular case, we believe there's very reasonable grounds to not see the twinned windows at the front reconstructed. The dwelling is part of a group of semi-detached dwellings that have all been heavily bastardised, and they are unlikely to ever be returned to being, if you like, a cohesive set of units. They are also located very hard up to South Terrace. The front room is only 3 metres off the footpath and is completely unsuitable to be used as a bedroom. In that context, it has no other use other than to be used as an ante-room, as if you like, a dressing room for the second room to be the bedroom, and that in itself is a very small room. And so effectively we're left with a room at the front of the house that would function ideally as a day room, a sitting room that can open out onto the very small veranda front courtyard that exists and provides some amenity for the use of that room. We'd really seek that be considered as something that, if you like, overrides the pure heritage that ordinarily I would be the first person to support, but in this case believe it can be accommodated within what is otherwise an overall very comprehensive conservation of the dwelling, including the conservation of the front of the house with all its original features and finishes, and also containing the doors within the parameters of the perimeter of the original twinned opening, which has been also the perimeter of the current horizontal aluminium windows. So it can be done without damaging heritage fabric, without precluding some future reinstatement of the twin windows. Not that I'd imagine that will ever happen, because, as I say, this room will never be used as a bedroom.
Thank you. I might invite Peter to speak, and then we can see if there are any questions for either of you. Thanks.
Good evening there, everybody. My name's Peter Sanders. I own the building there. I have for the last 38 years, when there was still a biscuit factory out the front of it. As John said, the front bedroom isn't really fit for purpose. It probably was back in 1901 when it was built, because the only vehicular traffic was horse-drawn carts. There weren't really any motor cars or motorbikes with loud exhaust in Western Australia at the time. John's pretty much gone through everything that I'd like to say, actually, except the fact that I've got to live in it. And for the livability there, that front room really makes the difference, because it can be used for the winter sun in the morning to enjoy the space, and it can be used in the summertime too, because it faces towards the east in the shade, for the sea breeze. And the restoration, as John sort of touched on, is only a small part of the overall project. And so the fact that we're asking for these French doors, they're only sort of like a small percentage overall of fixing up all the rest of the house as well. So the end result will be an almost 100% restoration and a significant improvement to the character of the building compared to the present condition. If you've seen the attachments on the agenda, it's pretty ugly. It's in a reasonable location, but definitely one of the worst houses in that location. So considering the above, I just ask that the councillors use the discretion vested in them to approve this small alteration to it, considering the overall scope of the work. And also, almost forgot, I'd like to thank those of you who did come for an appreciation of it yesterday at the site visit, so you could see the overall impact of it all. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Councillors, did you have questions for the owner or the architect? No, I think those of us who were there yesterday got through most questions, so we'll move to the item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a officer's recommendation and an alternative recommendation. Does anyone wish to move either of those? Councillor Lang? Yep. Okay, so Councillor Lang's moving the officer's recommendation. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Lorber? All right, Councillor Lang.
I've just read the report over the last few days, and I think the officers have got the right recommendation in place at the moment. I commend the applicant for restoring this building, and like many of the beautiful buildings on South Terrace that have been restored, replacing with the original windows and replacing and bringing back the original streetscape, it is something that I really do like about South Terrace. I've got a very similar house to this myself, and had pulled out the aluminium windows and installed new double hung sash windows in the property, which is actually on South Terrace. So I understand what you're saying about the traffic noise as well, but I'd be concerned that we might be setting a precedent for people who wish to modify these beautiful homes, and for people who might like to put in French doors instead of putting back the original sash windows. So for me, yeah, commend you on the restoration, but we should keep the building facade and the streetscape the same on South Terrace.
Thanks. Councillors? Does anyone want to speak further on this? Okay, well, we have to speak to and vote on this motion or switch motions. So, Councillor Sullivan, thanks.
Thanks. This is a hard one for me, and I agree with Councillor Lang insofar as the officers made the right recommendation, and I wouldn't expect our staff to make any other recommendation other than the one that they made. But that's also why it's come to us, because we're the decision maker that has to make the hard calls and has to try and understand whether there are circumstances that go beyond what the officers could normally recommend, and try and deal with that. Still in relation to the policies. Now, there is a house around the corner from this one, which is heritage listed at the exact same level. It's on a more important streetscape. It's on a corner of Marine Terrace and Jenkins Street. I won't identify which one. I've probably just narrowed it down to one, but anyway. And that seemingly got approval for not only one of these sorts of French doors, but actually 4 of them on both elevations, and significant alterations to what would have been known as the original fabric of the building. And that I have to walk past every day, and it frustrates the absolutely bejeebers out of me, because I wish I'd bought that house and actually conserved it and reinstated the windows as they would have been, and the like, as Councillor Lang has done at his house. So I guess the point of raising that is there does need to be some fairness in the way in which we apply our policies. These aren't, LAW laws. They are policies of the city, and the policy strongly encourages what the officers are recommending. But it doesn't say that we can't go outside of that. And so the circumstances in this one, I think, are reasonable. This is a more trafficked area than perhaps even Councillor Lang's front yard, because of the nature of the 2 zones of hospitality that exist either side of this particular area. There is a lot of foot traffic that goes up and down that street, and it does make living in the front rooms of these dwellings quite difficult. Almost every one of the terrace houses in that area has ended up with a high wall, and it's the high walls that I would like to see pulled down. I don't have a problem with a high fence, but the high walls are really the thing that's most distracting from the conservation of those properties. What the proponents have come forward with is actually a very detailed conservation element that has one part of it, just one element of it, which is kind of breaking the policy, the general policy approach, but doing it in a way that is still reasonably sympathetic to the original intent of the cottage. It's modernising it a fraction, and it's making it usable, which are both elements. Certainly, the usability is an element that can be considered in the borough charter, and so if that is what it takes to make that a really attractive place to live in into the future, then it is something that could be considered under the borough charter, and therefore could be considered, even though it should be still strongly encouraged not to do it, should be strongly encouraged to put the two windows back, but it's not beyond the council exercising its discretion. And I think Councillor Archibald's motion proposes to do exactly that, and that's the one I'll be supporting.
Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. Is that close enough? Yes, look, I just want to thank Councillor Sullivan for those comments, and I do concur with those views. That just to also add that the width of the proposed doorway is the original width that the two windows had. I think Councillor Sullivan mentioned that. So, in a sense, the opportunity will remain that if someone in the future is as enthusiastic as Councillor Lang, they can take the doors out and put the windows back. So, but overall, the work that's proposed to the cottage is just really quite wonderful, including, I believe, reinstating the chimney, so so that the fireplace can be used, and and down the side of the house, all of the original double hung window spaces will get a new double hung window. Also, the other thing that I felt too was that the extension, which will have the kind of kitchen living space on the ground floor, that the top level of the roof is still very much in keeping with the original roof line of the cottage. So I feel like a lot of attention to detail has been provided, and that the access from which are quite small rooms, the 3 rooms at the front, they are quite small. They're not nowhere near what many of the other cottages have. So to have that room to be able to access the veranda and to be able to sit in space and look out into the street, I think that would be a great asset to that cottage. So that I just thought I'd mention it now to kind of put the balance in the debate. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. Councillor Lorber.
Oh yeah, I seconded this just basically to have the debate, and I'm more in line with what Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Archibald has said, that I think having the French doors there, I won't repeat all their reasons, but it actually helped activate the street and provide more eyes on the street as such. So I'll be voting against this and supporting Councillor Archibald's alternate recommendation.
All right, councillors. So under the standing orders, we can either continue with the officer's recommendation or we can move to the alternate motion at any time. So, I mean, I'm certainly, I won't repeat Councillor Sullivan, but I'm on the same page as Councillor Sullivan on this one. So there are a number of us who are. So I guess it would be good to know if there are some more councillors who would prefer to support the officer's recommendation. Otherwise, we might suggest that Councillor Archibald moves their alternative.
I don't have anything to add, but I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Okay, so we might put the officer's recommendation to a vote, see where we get to, and go from there. So no further speakers? Okay, so Councillor Lang, you wish to close?
Yeah, it is only well, it is actually quite significant. South Terrace is a gorgeous, intact streetscape. There's not one other like it in Perth. And row after row of houses like that have got a front room with a fireplace that was a bedroom or maybe whatever else in the future. I am concerned that this is potentially setting a precedent that other homeowners along the street might like to follow, and we will lose that intact streetscape that is so gorgeous. I have actually had other members of the community ask me questions about doing similar things before, so this isn't the only property that might come to us in the future. Absolutely commend the restoration works and look forward to seeing what you do on the site. my preference would be to maintain the historic streetscape that we have that starts in Fremantle and goes all the way through to South Fremantle.
Thanks, Councillor Lang. So we'll put the officer's recommendation for refusal to a vote. All those in favour? Councillors Mofflin, Thompson and Lang. And against? So that's lost. So Councillor Archibald.
Okay, I would like to move my motion, which is on page 5 of the additional documents.
Councillor Sullivan, did you wish to second that? Yep.
No, I'm
Councillor-
happy to. I've already had it. Said what I would have said.
Okay. Are there any speakers on the alternative motion? In that case, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And against? Councillors Lang and Mofflin against, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay. I hope that made sense. That was approval. All right. Thompson Road. We don't have any speakers on Thompson Road. I might just check with elected members out of the items remaining, which items you wish to speak on. So we've got C item 5, we do need to pull out, but 3, 4, 6 and 7. Do we have people wishing to speak on either any of those? 3, 4, 6, 7?
Being the corporate plan. Yep.
Mm-hmm. You wish to speak on the corporate plan? Okay. So if I did 3, 4 and 6 on block, that would be okay? Yep. So Councillor Thompson's moving 3, 4 and 6 on block, seconded by Councillor Graham. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. 4 and 6. So I will go to item C24085, which is a new working group for community emissions. I'm still a little struggling with that name, but moved by Councillor Williamson Wong, seconded by Councillor Lolver. Councillor Williamson Wong.
Thank you. I don't have too much to say apart from that I'm very excited that this is coming to council. I've spoken to you all before. I think for me, this city and this council has already done so much on climate and in the corporate space, and being able to kind of tap into action to tackle the 500,000 tonnes that sits in our community is a very important issue. And I think also responding to comments that were made earlier in public question time, there is a tendency for any action on climate to come with heavy criticism on any other areas of emissions. And, you know, the climate crisis is so vast and we can't do everything. So there will always be room for this criticism, which I also think is a contributor to the huge inaction that we see, you know, that isn't taken on, the action that isn't taken on climate on much bigger levels. And equally as large as the climate crisis is huge, we also must do something. And as a city, we've done, or you have all done a lot. And I think moving to tackle community emissions feels like the next logical step for us. And I do think, echoing what the report says, there's options for us to have a big impact for smaller amounts of money. And I think that's also very exciting. So yeah, excited to see this come to us.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson Wong. Councillors. Councillor Archibald.
Just concurring with Councillor Williamson Wong, I also feel that this will be a great portal for community members who have been doing quite innovative things out there, and it's a way in which we can pick up on those things and perhaps help facilitate, get a greater traction. So I think it'll be a really, really interesting journey to go on, to work with the community on this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you, and I concur with those thoughts. And as people know, the CEO and I are going around precinct groups at the moment and trying to understand, not only what they want to talk to us about, but what community initiatives exist that they want us to get behind. And I think when we see that the movement to electrify the valley and electrify Fremantle are being driven completely by community, it's a great opportunity for us to look at what sort of supports we can give to those and other things that we may not even be aware of yet that are happening at a community level. So I'm really in support of this. If there's no one further to speak, we do need some elected members who might want to nominate. I'm going to take a wild guess and suggest that Councillor Williamson Wong wants to nominate Councillor Archibald, Councillor Lorva. If there are other councillors, apparently we are not limited by the 3 dots, are we? Dude. Councillor Graham, would you like to nominate?
Yeah, no, I'm not nominating for that one. I noticed, though, there's a couple of vacancies in the city plan, and that was done when I was up on my illness. I wouldn't mind going on the city plan if that's going to make it easier to do it now, or do I just send an email to
I'm not
the
sure we can
CEO?
do it as part of this recommendation.
Okay, that's all right.
But we will find another means. Thank you. Appreciate you joining that group. All right, so we seem to have 3 members and 3 dot points. And Councillor Kamada, did you wish to?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump on board.
Cool.
Look, I came in late on this one, obviously. I think this is a good initiative because it talks about solutions and working with the community. I will touch on the fossil fuel thing in relation to it, which I've made my thoughts obvious on. This is the sort of thing I like to see happen, where we talk about what we can do to make positive change. So, yeah, I support this 100%.
Thanks, Councillor Kamada. All right, well, we've got some members. We've got a motion to create a working group. Shall I put it to a vote? Excellent. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Call it a birthday present for Councillor Williamson Wong. And we'll go to the corporate report. Councillor Archibald, did you want to move that one? And seconded by Councillor Graham. Councillor Archibald?
Yes, I just thought that I'd make a comment because a great deal of work does get done in this organisation, which gets very little light of day at times. And also part of the council's agenda has been to try and increase the population within the municipality and to increase the visitation down into the CBD and other places of the city. So I just picked out a few little bits that really made me think that we definitely are heading in a good direction. That between January and June in 24, that's this year, more than $253 million of planning and building approvals went through went through this council. In the financial year of 23-24, planning and building application investments was totaled more than $518 million. I mean, it's just great traction in terms of getting people to come in and do work. And a good deal of that is quite interesting architecture and development. Tonight we also approved a development which has it's got 160 odd lots. I can't remember how many dwellings is proposed. Did somebody have? Sorry, 206 dwellings. So that's a great plus to the first 6 months of this year. We also had we hosted 86 festivals and events. More than 360,000 visitors came to those festivals and events, and it added another $22 million to the economic benefit of the city. In Walyalup Court, we recently, very excitingly, got the funds from Lotteries West to do the Indigenous artwork, but so that can progress. We've got Reconciliation Australia has just had its RAP endorsed in July, and that will come to the next RAP meeting and then to council for sign-off. We had 395 new dwellings approved during some of this time, with 215 of them in the city centre. That was something that made me feel very pleased, because that's kind of, you know, slightly more than half of the dwellings were in the city centre. So, I really do think that a huge amount of long-term work has gone into trying to encourage development in the city, and I just felt like that was a pretty amazing run. And hopefully the benefit of all that in long term will start to really show. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. Do appreciate that. All right, councillors, if there's nothing further, I'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour? Great, that's unanimous. So that, I believe, brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. So I'll declare the meeting closed at 7:31. Thank you.